Hey folks, welcome to the Freakopolis Times, our podcast mostly about stuff related to our comics and game shop, the Freakopolis Geekery. We're Ian, Tyler, and Troy, and we run the shop and talk to people all the time, just like in this podcast. Join us and some occasional guests as we talk comics, games, pop culture, and just about anything else that pops up. Remember, while some of our topics may get a little geeky, they change up pretty often, so hang in there and maybe the next one will be more your style. By the way, this podcast is video enhanced on YouTube and Spotify. Check it out that way if you like visuals with your talk. You never know what might show up. Now, let's do the show.
We got a bunch of great stuff this week. As usual, actually. We've been finding that they're just kind of throwing us a ton of bones on the media and comics and games end of things. So let's delve into it and not hold back. First up on the list is...
This past week, the new Magic the Gathering Dominaria released.
Yeah, and what a wild release it is. This is quite the set. We've seen really pretty excellent reactions from our community.
We had a great turnout for our pre-release event. Everybody had a lot of fun, and the pulls were, according to everyone, some of the best cards they've ever gotten from pre-release packs.
Yeah, well, I've seen quite a few that were really pretty mind-blowing. Some full art planeswalkers and stuff that otherwise, I don't know if you'd be seeing these things in any other set so readily, you know. Dominaria United is just jam-packed with all sorts of great cards. From those planeswalkers to, like, stuff that bolsters really classic decks that people like to run, like goblins and elves and stuff, obviously, since it's so, original to Magic the Gathering and Dominaria United being their first original kind of setting for Magic itself. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And in fact, like, at the moment, a lot of those rares are $10 cards. A lot of the mythics and the full art mythics, the full art foils, or the Phyrexian stuff are like $70 to $150. You know, there's stuff to be found within this set that is real collector items. Not to mention super powerful when it hits the field. Like, oh my goodness. So
I've kind of missed out on the pre-release.
Yeah, I know. Come on, man.
And the packs we've seen pulled in the shop.
Well, maybe
I know.
by the time this releases, though, because we're doing sort of a second pre-release event tomorrow.
That's true. Hopefully, I'll get in on
today,
that.
In terms of the podcast.
True enough. That should be really exciting. We have just enough pre-release kits in stock to run another event like that. And not to mention, we have those Jumpstart kits coming in for Friday. It's going to be super exciting. We've never had the opportunity to run a Jumpstart event because there's been no Jumpstart releases during the time that we've been in on Magic. But it should be super exciting. Definitely pumped to see that format. It sounds like, draft/sealed without any of the hassle.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, though. It's sort of like they had two simultaneous releases.
In a way, yeah.
I mean, I know Jumpstart is somehow... I mean, we haven't seen them yet, so we don't really know how fully connected to Dominaria United they are. But they're basically releasing at the same time. It's both of them entirely new. We're still in the pre-release period for Dominaria United and Jumpstart showing up, so everybody's going to have a chance to try all different kinds of things, I guess, in terms of playing Magic.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I can also definitely see that format, the Jumpstart sets, as an excellent way for beginners to mash together a new set to play with, or if you want to do a draft at home, it's so easy to pick up some of these combinations. You just take two of these packs, slam them together, and you get a playable deck.
Right, you open two packs, you put them together. You must have to put lands in or something.
Not sure, yeah. I haven't played it ever before, but we'll find out soon, yeah. I'm very excited to see if that's the case. There's also so many god dang legendary creatures in Dominaria.
Yeah.
Commander's going to have a million new options, yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Tyler, have you gotten any Dominaria packs yet?
Not yet.
And did you get anything in your release, Ian?
I did, yeah. I got a Rundholt Commander, I believe, or something along those lines. It's a goblin that really kicks butt. Allows you to play goblins off the top of your deck whenever a goblin you control dies.
Which is a lot of the time.
Yeah, you're going to be killing those goblins yourself, most likely anyway. So That's definitely a cool one, as well as some really interesting, legendary creatures and stuff. Zur with a Z.
Right, exactly. And now, okay, so that isn't the only thing that released this past week. We also had the HeroClix X of Swords tournament kind of going on at the same time. So during the pre-release of Dominaria, we had HeroClix X of Swords as a tournament that we ran, and that was a cool tournament. And what was in there was unique and kind of exciting. With the boosters being special boosters for the tournament, and there being a sword and a tarot card and everyone.
Every booster, yeah.
They're adding layers on layers in HeroClix now.
Yeah, that was an exciting event for sure, and it was definitely an interesting format for HeroClix with the small size battle royale, right?
Yeah, the map was smaller than a usual HeroClix map. There was 4 players,
right?
So it was a pretty crowded battle space, and the added mechanics of the new tarot cards was
really shaking things up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What the general consensus and conversation around this set seems to be, though, is point value versus clicks provided, because it seems like there is a big inflation occurring at the moment between these sets, where 30 points can get you like 6 or 7 clicks these days, whereas back in the day, 30 points was 2 or 3 pretty crappy clicks.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Not to mention all the swords bringing blades, claws, fangs.
Right.
So any of those older characters, a single, 3 or 4, and they're going to be wiped out. These newer ones, they could take a lot of damage.
So how does it work? Every sword offers blade, claws, fangs.
Yep. Yes.
And something else?
Yeah. And an additional effect. Yeah. Usually pretty strong.
Yeah, varied for sure, but they're definitely impactful equipment. More impactful probably than most equipment they've ever provided in the game.
And in the tournament, every character that you play can wield a sword.
They can, though you only have one.
Right, you have one sword, but you can put it on any one of your characters. Where after the tournament, after the special event tournament,
a lot of them are still sword bearers.
Yeah,
but
they have to be marked.
It has to be on their card.
Yeah. You could still have the sword on your team and have them go pick it up if they don't have that.
But sword bearers can start with a sword equipped, which is what you're always looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are all swords 5 points?
Yeah, yes. As far as we've seen, yeah. And they can be pretty impressive in their effects, for sure.
That's pretty inexpensive for the features they give the character. That's definitely a game changer. Add that little piece of equipment for 5 points out of your typically 300-point totals.
Yeah.
Add that 5 points in, and suddenly somebody's become really powerful. Blades, Claws, Fangs is very powerful.
It's a menace. It's notoriously such a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give Blades, Claws to somebody like Spider-Man or whatever.
And you have a problem on your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a cool set, and that particular event was a really interesting way to play. I wish it had been there on release of X of Swords, though. It was kind of annoying to have to wait to do the big event until like a month after initial release.
I guess the only advantage was in our shop we practiced that form of tournament play that it specifies
on our awesome huge map.
Yeah, so we were able to play with that a bit prior, and then when we got this one, as Tyler mentioned, the map was small. Typically the map is 2 feet by 3 feet for a 1v1 game, and in this case you had 4 different players on a map that was only 2 feet by 2 feet. So a pretty small square of a map. A bizarre map, in fact. The WizKids really kind of went wild with their map design there. But it turned out to be a lot of fun, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. We're going to redo that one as well, in the same way that we're redoing the Dominaria pre-release event. We're going to redo playing the HeroClix tournament, not this Thursday night, but a week from this Thursday night. We're going to do another round of the
X of Swords.
The X of Swords,
Royale,
first month, from the first month kit, because we have remaining boosters and some people that weren't able to make it to play.
That should be wicked fun. I'm looking forward to it. So that's been a lot of cool new stuff on the table, for sure.
Yeah, there's been more releases than just games, though.
Mm.
A lot of our favorite television shows have been continuing.
Yeah, we can't ignore them.
No.
It's kind of occupying a lot of our conversation and fantasy space, for sure. I'm happy to see it. I'm very surprised that TJ, our older brother, much missed, out in Arizona, sent me a message, I believe it was yesterday morning, that the Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power production from Amazon was, in his opinion, really, really good. I didn't fully anticipate that. I've always been kind of cynical when addressing this production, partially just because screw Amazon, but also partially because I didn't imagine that they would pay it the heed and the consideration that it requires, And approaching Tolkien and his property after his death doesn't seem quite right. But I also always gave the the end point on all those conversations, I suppose, that if it's still just good fantasy, then that has merit to it, and it appears to have delivered on that end.
Then I'd say it probably did what it set out to do. I probably would have preferred a more close-to-home Tolkien-esque TV show where they didn't change too much, but if they succeeded in producing a pretty good fantasy show, then that checks out.
Yeah. You would also know, I'm sure, probably to some criticism, that the intro is very much so Peter Jackson's intro to Lord of the Rings, the movies, with sweeping landscape shots and a big battle of elves versus orcs and stuff. It's incredibly reminiscent. It's just a straight-up callback or homage, really. And that's interesting to see. It's as though they couldn't, get away from those iconic scenes by their own merit. They had to be sure to throw the fans that bone.
And, people on our Discord, on the Freakopolis Discord, have been talking about it. Everyone that's seen it so far seems to think it's really good and enjoys it.
Yeah.
I have to admit, because I'm such a fan of Tolkien's original work, and because that's where D&D comes from and all that, I really didn't want people messing with it. And so in a certain regard, I would have to admit, I almost didn't want it to be good.
No, sure, right.
Because, it feels like that would, I don't know, in some way cheapen the original work,
You're not alone in that sentiment.
And, it's a tough thing to admit.
Mm-hmm.
But, part of me is, was hoping it would just fail,
Sure enough, yeah.
But, okay, let's see it. Let's see how great this is.
I kind of felt that way about House of the Dragon,
Sure
to
enough,
be fair,
right?
as well.
Yeah.
It's like, neither of these things are gonna live up to expectations or be as good as their original predecessor. But they're kind of doing it so far, it sounds like.
Managing to hit that mark, which is pretty interesting for sure. Especially when you consider that both of them have now been renewed as of their second episode. The Rings of Power has been renewed for 2 more seasons, and House of the Dragon has been renewed for season 2.
And so, so you guys watched it last night, the latest one. You're enjoying it or what?
Yeah, we haven't quite kicked off the Rings of Power yet, but Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, we've been delving into already. I'm sure we'll do both. Mom's really gonna love Lord of the Rings, I bet.
She probably will. I was pretty pumped for this episode of House of the Dragon that released this Sunday. It lived up to my expectations in some ways. It certainly moved the plot along very quickly. We saw a time skip.
Yeah, that's their second time skip. In fact, the second episode was 6 months from the first, and the third appears to be like 2 to 3 years from the second. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, time is moving quite quickly. And in fact, these characters, I've listened to the podcast production behind House of the Dragon, now the HBO official podcast, and these actors are playing young versions of, the characters that will come to be, obviously. The real story happens like a decade post where we start.
Did they actually change any of the actors?
Not yet.
The
Well,
roles?
I mean, they appear more mature for sure, slightly at least. They've done some tricks in order to age them up appropriately, but most of the way they've managed to do things is pretty slick, where you wouldn't really... You'd think it was an easy transition for those years.
Well, because from the first one, what's it, Rhaenyra?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
She looked like she was maybe last week she was like 11 or 12, right? And so you're telling me this week she's more like 15?
She was, I believe
She was like 14 or
14.
15.
Yeah.
Now she's 17.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely been, and it's just kind of in the way that they compose themselves and the actors themselves.
Okay.
In the delivery of those scenes, it works out pretty well, and the progression feels. I like this pace because it feels as though these characters are developing, and we're able to see who they will become during the big conflict that's obviously on the horizon.
Yeah, very true. We saw our first taste of battles in this new Game of Thrones spin-off.
I think the battle scenes have been the most controversial so far.
I think they pretty much are. I would agree with that sentiment.
There's a lot of death-defying antics that go on with Prince Daemon.
That's fine.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing, is like the character is lucky and kind of suicidal, and you can get past that when it comes to these characters that are depicted as legends of old.
Exactly.
Stuff, like why not let them have cool actiony moments like that?
What's an example?
He charges a beach, single man,
To draw out the entire enemy force, pretty much.
Yeah, supposedly, like he waves a white flag in front of them. Sorry, spoilery. And draws them out, only to have it be a trick in the end. But he essentially...
Oh, he's the sort that'll do that. Huh?
Yeah,
he's the rogue prince, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he single-handedly faces off against, 20 guys, one after another. And he comes out on top, although grievously injured. And then he, in an off-screen fight, manages to defeat the greatest nemesis that he had been facing over the past 2 years, It was really just kind of a show of his prowess martially, and that he was willing to take all this risk for a big win.
To refuse help, pretty much.
And sure, there was some choreography that wasn't real medieval battle tactics and stuff, but honestly, very few shows attempt to actually do that. Sometimes this one's full of dragons and crazy Valyrian armor and magic swords and stuff. Throw them a moment of awesome fantasy action every once in a while. It doesn't need to be mega gritty.
Right, so he's a superhero champion in that kind of way.
In that moment,
He's a high-level fighter,
yeah.
for sure. It's like Aragorn or
There'll
something.
be other ones, too, kind of like the Hound was.
Sure enough, yeah.
The Mountain, and they're exemplary fighters in that world.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stories in that setting about how King Robert, when he was young, was a fighter who pulled many such moves and maneuvers where he single-handedly would face off against many, many foes and come crushing down on them with his warhammer and all that kind of stuff. So if characters were able to do that in the past of Game of Thrones, then I believe that they should be allowed to do that in this show, for sure.
Yeah, we see Jaime cut down 20 dudes multiple times in Game of Thrones, so why can that?
Yeah, I believe they were also criticizing the tactics of the crab feeder, which obviously were,
He's a pirate.
By the way, he has grayscale. Duh.
Of course.
And he has mega advanced grayscale, and that causes your brain to rot.
Mm-hmm. You can see that.
He's obviously a deranged dude, so maybe tactics were at the forefront of his mind. There's a lot that you can hand wave for the cinematography and the action and the scenery of it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of cinematography, guess who's been getting a lot of close-ups on her booty this week?
She-Hulk?
She-Hulk.
Is that a real issue going on here?
Apparently so. People are having a hard time with this 20 or so second moment of She-Hulk letting loose and twerking for a bit. And it's like, is this really worth such a degree of discussion? It's obviously just lighthearted and funny,
So what's going on here? There was a scene with She-Hulk twerking.
Yeah, she meets up with her favorite rapper. They end up having some fun together, dancing and ending up twerking. And, honestly, I think that the real topic that should be brought to the forefront is Marvel's obsession with the gratuitous ass shot. Which
Captain America,
Black
Thor.
Widow, Thor, Captain Marvel. There's at least they're gender neutral about it, right? But they do. That's how they appeal to their 18+ audience. They're just like, these characters are sexy. If you didn't notice.
Yeah, that's lawful evil Disney for you.
True enough, right?
I mean, it's not like it's a new idea to have some sex appeal on television programs.
No. She-Hulk is a great character to explore that kind of funny stuff with, given she's in herself a character that has a long history of being satirical and filled with humor,
Oh, definitely. Yeah, she's kind of been one of those fourth wall breaking comic characters. So yeah, why not have some fun with it? So in general, though, the internet wasn't too happy with it.
There are some corners, at least some volatile, misogynistic corners, I'm sure. The majority of people just said, yeah, that was a funny scene. And a lot of people said, what? Like, what is happening here? She-Hulk?
Also, would care if Deadpool twerked?
Exactly, yeah. And Deadpool and She-Hulk share a lot of DNA in the way they're written. I think that She-Hulk actually comes from a more genuine place from a writer's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool is a lot of fun and stuff, but Deadpool, the character, as a fourth wall breaking satirical character, is like a meme. He's immature, That's kind of the point. I get the appeal for a lot of people. A lot of people don't like him for that reason. She-Hulk, on the other hand, most people don't even realize that that's part of her character, and yet I think she does it in a more considerate way.
Well, she's kind of human and real world.
Self-aware.
Like she lives in the real world.
Right. Yeah, no one would have a problem if Deadpool was twerking. She-Hulk, for some reason, it's a big controversy.
Off limits.
Yeah, not worth it, honestly.
I'm sure Deadpool must have twerked at some point, right?
He absolutely has, I'm sure, canonically, however. Not specifically the Ryan Reynolds Deadpool, as far as I've seen. But if he did, it wouldn't be that big a deal at all.
I would think the misogynists out there would say they want more twerking.
You would imagine, right? They're a very conflicted group of people.
Too much, not enough. Yeah. I don't know. So I think it was last week we talked about Discovery and HBO and Warner Brothers and all of that, and the sort of bulk canceling of a ton of HBO animation. And HBO was quite well known for, being one of the studios that has a lot of animation in their stable, and now they've knocked out a ton of it. I mean, some examples of things that were canceled. I've got here Batman the Cape Crusader, Summer Camp Island, Infinity Train, Little Ellen, and Mau Mau, Heroes of Pure Heart. A lot of these sound like kids' programs, of course. Some of them sound like things that, people that like superheroes would be watching.
Naturally, yeah. Under their umbrella is a lot of cool productions. In particular, you have DC's animated side, which might be their strongest piece of media work time after time, for sure. And otherwise, this acquisition and merger has just been a wrecking ball towards so many of their productions.
Well, I think when you have to turn around and you've got to slash $3 billion from your budget, there is going to be a wrecking ball. However, it does seem to be a really targeted wrecking ball, targeting a lot of the sort of things based on animation, things based on diversity, and apparently they're purely mainstream live action is the only thing that's going to survive. However, Harley Quinn, the animated series, did get signed for a 4th season. So somehow that one slipped through.
I'm glad for that, because that's probably the best Harley's ever been.
And that one, interestingly enough, does include both animation and diversity.
Yeah.
So, diversity in so much as Harley and Ivy seem to have a romantic relationship going on.
Absolutely. No, I think they're definitely looking towards their live action productions to carry that boat. I'm not surprised. They have a really strong lineup on that end, and animation is risky and niche and expensive.
But much like Batgirl and that getting canceled, a ton of these animations are already produced.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they're dropping seasons of shows that they're already hosting. And that leaves them as just kind of like ghost media, where you could find a pirated version, I suppose, but otherwise you have nowhere to watch these shows. Like, they don't exist anymore. I can't imagine how that feels to the creators,
I see that, like, even 200 episodes of Sesame Street, previously produced episodes of Sesame Street, got canceled just so they wouldn't have to pay the licensing fees.
Wow.
That's sad. Sesame Street is, like, demonstratively good for people.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, if there's additional motivation beyond just cutting the budget, if they're targeting that because of the beliefs of the new CEO.
Yeah.
And, the sort of dark suits that are involved in this whole thing. They're not creative people. They're just people that get their hands on the control levers for all of the things that creative people are working on. And they choose to eliminate the ones that they don't personally agree with or believe in.
Yeah, they gotta make money. But I was pretty heartbroken when I heard they were canceling all their animated shows. But to hear Harley Quinn is the one that survived, that is good to hear.
I suppose so. I think the team on that show really loves what they do and loves playing with those characters. And I've even introduced some worthwhile original characters, much like Harley Quinn herself came from Batman in the animated series. So between all that, it's kind of a heartbreaking move in some ways, but it's an understandable move in that they're hedging their bets,
Sure.
I really liked Jason Alexander's cyborg character in that series. That was a lot of fun. So.
No, for sure, exactly. We haven't really delved into the 3rd season there, but it must be pretty quality in order for there to be a 4th season.
Yeah, I'm planning on watching. I'm trying to wrap up a couple of other
there's so much
bingeable shows that
Battle
I've been watching. Usually, it's actually I've been trying to make my way through all of C-Lab, and once I finish C-Lab, I'm probably going to go back to Harley Quinn.
C-Lab 2021.
Yeah,
jeez, in the recent past.
Yeah,
Do you think they were trying to escape COVID?
I think they just rename it with a recent year because the format is not even 16:9, so it's all cartoons created before HD. But they can stick a new header on it and call it C-Lab 2021. It really doesn't matter. It's rather timeless media.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things I wanted to do with this podcast, and we'll do it occasionally, is sort of pull back the veil a little bit on comic and game shop operation, and how it is to run a comic shop in 2022.
Indeed.
And so we've been around for 6 years. We've got a certain amount of experience now at this. And one of the things that's changed over the years that we've been open is when we originally opened, basically all periodical comics were gotten from the same place. Diamond Comic Distributors pretty much had a lock on everything monthly that came out from comic publishers.
They did it all, yeah.
Everything from Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, Aftershock.
All the indie guys.
Everything. You got it all from Diamond Comics. And of course, the complaint at that point was their shipping was extremely high, and
there's no other option.
And it was a monopoly. Yeah. You couldn't make any other choices. Well, I mean, since then, DC Comics broke away. And completely broke away, so that Diamond really doesn't have access to DC Comics anymore.
Yeah, that was a huge shakeup.
So, of course, that's Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and The Flash, and Green Lantern, all of those guys. So DC Comics broke away. Basically, they went from one exclusive distribution deal with Diamond to an exclusive distribution deal with Discount Comics distribution, aka Lunar distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And so that meant basically they wanted us to set up an entire new account with Lunar. Lunar happens to be Discount Comics happens to be a distribution arm that will also sell directly to end users. So essentially they wanted us to set up our new account with a distributor that
we're competing with.
Yeah, that we're effectively competing with. They'll directly compete with us. They'll say, hey, you can get your comics from your local friendly comic book shop, or you can just order them online directly from us, and they'll arrive in a cardboard box. A lot of people like to go that way. A lot of people still prefer, fortunately, actual comic shops.
Mm-hmm.
But some people would rather, I think, probably save some money. Maybe there's some money to be saved there. I don't know. I haven't really looked at it. But the interesting thing is, since then, also Marvel has broken away and gone to Penguin Random House as their distributor. So now comics distribution is spread across at least 3 large distributors. All of them tend to have sort of a specific deal with each of these distributors, and they want us all to have separate accounts with them, which would mean separate ordering, separate shipment, separate payments, different processes for damaged books, shorted books, returns, any of that stuff. And frankly, it sort of makes me long for the day when you had the monopoly of Diamond.
Right.
Now, in our case, we chose to continue getting our Marvel comics through Diamond because that sort of allows us to keep our discount at a reasonable level with Diamond. It's not good, but it's better than it would be if we chose to get our Marvel comics directly from Penguin Random House. And frankly, we sort of had to drop DC because DC went to Lunar, and that distribution deal just doesn't work for us. We'd lose money with every shipment we took. And so, we can't do that. Now, however, we can access trade paperbacks, DC trade paperbacks, through Penguin Random House of all places.
Right.
So to some degree, we've started bringing in new copies of DC trade paperbacks and collected editions, hardcovers, that sort of thing. Periodicals is still sort of beyond our reach as a small shop. We simply can't get enough of a discount that after the shipping it makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it works decently for us because we've had a general focus on having a cool selection of trades and whatnot anyway. And the pull list is what brings in the monthlies and the bi-weeklies or the bi-monthlies and stuff like that. But in that, though, unfortunately, with the dismantling of Diamond, which really I think a lot of people looked forward to as a big shakeup for the industry, a big movement into the future of comics. In that big movement, we found that the consequences did not necessarily benefit us by any means, and still pull list members are made to not order DC through us.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of stores that have very large numbers of sales of comics. Essentially, they see Diamond now as that's where you go to get Image comics. That's specifically Image. For us, it's Image and Marvel, and then all of the other indie publishers. But we couldn't make sense to get DC from Lunar, and that means that even our pull list customers can't get DC periodicals through us, which is disappointing. I wish we could offer that. We can't really see clear a way to do it right now. I did hear that there is another distributor that has picked up DC Comics, and really it's a Canadian distributor, I believe, called Enterprise Comics Distribution. However, it's the same sort of deal. We'd have to have a separate deal with them, separate set of discounts, separate set of ordering, separate processes. And, if you do any of this sort of work, it really relies on having a volume of that to do in order to make any money at it. And, we're a small shop, and we can't really make that work anywhere. DC really ought to offer some level of distribution back through Diamond again to be supported by smaller shops.
Now, DC also, their comics now go to Targets as well, right?
I believe that's the case, yeah, and that's part of what they were doing was, selling their comics. But I mean, boy, if you ever want to see some beat up comics, try to get them from a big box store, or Walmart.
Or if you're ever looking for recommendations, go to a Target employee and ask them, what DC comics do you recommend?
No, for real, it's truly an unfortunate circumstance on that end. Over the past 2 years or so?
Yeah, of course.
That happened? Yeah.
The combination of the distributors kind of getting all broken down into being separate things, and the pandemic causing this supply chain issues. So that all of a sudden, books weren't being able to get onto the printing presses on their scheduled dates. That caused a lot of them to be canceled, postponed, delayed. But many of them are starting to become available again. The collected editions are starting to come out again.
Yeah.
And we're getting more and more of them into the shop. So that part is definitely cool. We would love to have access to even more DC stuff. We'll see how things go in the future. It seems like maybe they're might be changing their mind on some of that stuff, or relaxing their processes a little bit in order to make them available. We'll see. There's a lot of D&D monsters out there.
Yeah.
Sometimes we like to think about what it would be like if we could actually encounter them. And I guess one of the questions that I want to pose to you guys is, what D&D monster would you like to invite to a barbecue? Either to be on the grill
Okay.
or across the table.
Those would be two very different choices.
Yeah. I don't know. What D&D monster would be best in a hot dog?
That's a good question.
It is. It absolutely is.
There's so many to choose from.
As far as just inviting one over to pal around with at the barbecue goes, dragons, of course, are capable of polymorphing themselves into very human forms, and I feel like there wouldn't be a greater grill master in the land than a red dragon. They would probably be pretty greedy over the grill, but they would nail that food for sure.
No doubt. I feel like a GIF, considering they're in some of the latest books, a GIF warlord or something, be cool to buddy around with. He's probably a pretty good cook.
That's the hippopotamus guy?
Yeah.
the gun-loving hippos.
Yeah.
They'd probably love to blast some stuff in your backyard.
Right, exactly. So some glass bottles or something.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
One of those shooting parties.
Uh-huh.
Sure, with the GIF?
Yes.
Oh, it would be.
It would be fun.
Barbecue and shooting. We've been to those. We have some friends around.
Totally. Yeah, the GIF would well belong amidst those crowds. As far as on the grill goes,
Yeah. For some reason, I'm thinking remoras would be tasty.
they're like giant centipedes.
They are, but
Ice centipedes. Super poisonous.
That's a bug.
it's like sushi. Alright, maybe not remoras.
You know, I haven't had many frog legs, but I bet your bullywog tastes pretty good.
Those are too humanoid.
Well,
Giant frog, though.
Frogema?
Frogheman. Yeah. I'd be down for some of that.
Oh, no, you know, I bet you, do you think a minotaur would be offended by the invitation?
To a barbecue?
Yeah. Do you skip out on them?
Well, are minotaurs carnivores or omnivores? You'd think they'd be herbivores, but...
Dude, one would imagine in a civilized world, when they're not caught in mazes, yeah.
But you'd think they'd also make a pretty decent hamburger.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I was leaning. Yeah.
Maybe
Now,
Nice
a little
lean
tough,
minotaur.
as long as you're not counting on us to kill these things ourselves and putting them on the grill.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of like seafood and stuff. But as far as like something I would put in between a bun,
Yeah.
that's a D&D monster.
Owlbear.
Owlbears. Yeah, it probably tastes like chicken.
Chicken bear.
Yeah.
Monsters aren't generally good eating. Don't see people mowing down on beholder eyes every day.
No. Jelly beholder eyes.
Gelatinous cube would make a good dessert, to be fair.
There are various D&D cookbooks out there.
There is, absolutely.
It'd be interesting to tap into some of those and
I think there's whole modules based around eating monsters.
get a barbecue together.
There's probably a little bit of a different angle to that than I'm not looking for.
Okay, folks at home listening, we're looking for
Your most edible D&D monster.
yeah, and perhaps a recipe to go with it. Maybe we can try one of these.
If we can track one down, we'll cook it and let you know how it tastes.
or we'll do a simulation. If you think you can come up with a way that would make a hamburger more like a minotaur.
Get Volo in here. Surely he cooked up all those things. Couldn't have wrote about him if he didn't.
And finally, it tastes like chicken.
Right, it's pretty much what he says for everything, so...
And that about does it for this one. If you like hanging with us, please subscribe through your favorite podcast directory. Join our Discord and check out our shop, the Freakopolis Geekery. See you next time.